definition of gainfully.
Bishop Jackson, do you have thoughts on this?
Yes, since you just made that comment, my website is wjackson.com for all those matters. I was in a Best Buy with my wife buying an appliance, and there was a young man standing in before last year's 2016 election, and I just engaged him. He said, "How you doing?" He spoke. I said, "Who are you voting for?" He said, "Hillary Clinton." I said, "Really? Why?" And he said, "Because she's going to give us free education." And I said, "You realize it's not free, right?" And he kind of looked at me with a puzzled look as if I had said something very strange. I said, "I mean, you realize somebody's got to pay the professors. Somebody's got to pay for the electricity and the heat and the books." And he said, "Oh, well, that doesn't matter. I just want it to be free to me." The federal government and its intervention in education, the same thing is true in the whole welfare system and with Obamacare, with all of it, convinces people that there's a free ride, and there isn't. There just isn't. Somebody has got to pay for the goods and services that we obtain. And the best way to get prices down in any industry where the government intrudes is get the government out of the way. Because as long as it infuses dollars into the system, those dollars are going to basically prices are going to chase those dollars to keep bringing them in. And so I think the biggest problem we have with our education, aside from the cultural issues that my colleague alluded to, is the fact that the federal government has intervened and inflated the cost of a college education. I think we get the federal government back out of the system, I think we could begin to see those costs come down.
Thank you. Delegate Freitas, your thoughts on this?
So not only can the federal government not manage your retirement, guess what they're also not good at? College loans. If you look at inflation, from 1978 until right now, it's increased about 250, 255%. If you look at your college tuition, it's increased by 1,000%. So what explains that? Because it's not normal market forces. And what explains that is that once upon a time, if you wanted to go to college, there was about 3 ways that you did it. You got an academic or athletic scholarship, you paid your own way, or you got a loan for a private lending institution. Well, somebody in Washington, D.C. got the bright idea that that wasn't fair to people that couldn't meet one of those 3 criteria, so they decided to give out free money, i.e. tax dollars in the form of college loans. Now, again, it's not very free to you because you've got to pay it back. But let me tell you about the perverse incentives that this created within the marketplace. So in those 3 ways that I previously discussed, you had positive incentives to work hard in order to get a degree that was actually going to equip you to be economically viable. And universities had an incentive to provide you with a degree that was going to make you economically viable. But the moment the university can get your money because the federal government is just transferring from taxpayers to you, to the university, and then you've got to pay it back over time. Now all of a sudden universities have more of an incentive to just provide you a fun environment. Now I'm not saying that happens everywhere, and I'm not suggesting you're not getting a quality education here. I'm saying that we've got to be very careful about the perverse incentives the government creates when it inserts itself into a marketplace that it knows nothing about and has no unique qualifications to try to manage. So if you move the government out of the process, we can return to more of a highly competitive market to where everywhere else in the marketplace you see lowering prices and increased quality, except in areas like education and healthcare where the government has inserted itself and planted a huge bureaucracy, and it has the opposite effect. You have an increased pressure on prices and a downward pressure on quality.
Thank you, Delegate. Our next question will begin with Bishop Jackson. The subject of the question is enforcement of illegal immigration laws by the federal government. It comes to us from David Kaine from Charlottesville, Virginia. Do you support enforcement of federal illegal immigration laws at the federal level, including arresting mayors or governors who approve of sanctuary cities or states?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, the most essential role of the federal government is to provide for the safety and security of its citizens. I mean, that's its most essential role. And when it advocates that by allowing people to willy-nilly release criminals onto our streets who kill Americans, rape Americans, rob Americans. And I know people say, well, you know, the illegal immigrant population commits less crime than the average citizen. That's not even the point. The point is they're not supposed to be here in the first place. And therefore, whatever citizen they harm would not be harmed were it not for the fact that they are here. And so it's important that the federal government take a strong stand. Let me add this. I have no politicians who want to make themselves the equivalent of Dr. King by allowing Americans to suffer and die, acting like they're some sort of big civil rights hero by protecting illegal immigrants. I have no use for it. To me, it is a perversion of what the civil rights movement was all about. And yes, if I were a United States Senator, I would ask the Justice Department to investigate and ultimately prosecute those mayors, those public officials who will not cooperate with letting ICE do its job to arrest illegal immigrants and get them out of our country.
Delegate Freitas, your thoughts on federal enforcement of immigration laws?
So it is clearly unconstitutional the federal government's responsibility to enforce immigration law. Right, that comes with about three major things. One is obviously the enforcement. So when you find somebody that is actually guilty of breaking that law, there's a punishment, there's deportation, whatever it is. The other two are border security and an merit-based immigration system. And the reason why we should move toward a merit-based immigration system is very simple. It's because it's actually better not only for U.S. citizens, but I believe it's also better for immigrants. Because what it does is it places a priority and the emphasis on people that want to immigrate here legally, that want to come here with something to contribute, and that desperately want to be an American. Right now, we have so much emphasis on people that have come here illegally. We have situations like happened in my county where I'm desperately trying to help two people that came here illegally, did it all right, and then got sent home because there was a mix-up between immigration and Department of Labor. So we need to refocus the emphasis back on legal immigration, providing a process to do so, and absolutely the federal government has to enforce this. Now here's one thing that's a little bit more nuanced, but I hope you will pay attention to this. If you were talking about the federal government coming in and prosecuting any state or local official that is not carrying out immigration law, now if they're obstructing it, you can absolutely, like what happened at Oakland, you can absolutely prosecute them. But if you're going to prosecute them for not enforcing, what you've essentially done is federalize every single law enforcement agency in the country, and that is a clear violation of federalism. So let the federal government do its job and follow the constitutional process that we did in Virginia, where we told, as a state legislature, that we expect our local and state law enforcement to cooperate.
Thank you, Delegate Freitas. Chairman Stewart, your thoughts on the immigration issue?
You notice he didn't answer the question. The question is whether or not you would use the federal government to prosecute local and state officials who declare their jurisdictions as sanctuary cities. And he said last week during that debate that he would not. Now I know that's a political liability, but the question is whether or not you change your mind. Here's why you need to prosecute those individuals. They are essentially declaring safe harbors for criminals. That is what's going on. And I am very, very close to this issue, some of you know. In 2007, we had murders committed by illegal aliens, and finally the public had enough, and they asked us to do something about it. And I became the very first jurisdiction in the United States that led the toughest crackdown on illegal immigration anywhere in this country. And so far, as a result of that, using local officials, local police officials, to apprehend, identify, and prosecute illegal aliens, and so far we've handed over to the government more than 8,000 criminal illegal aliens, and our violent crime rate went down by 48.7% in 2 years. That's what we got to do, and yes, we need to prosecute any local or state official who flaunts federal law and does not comply with those who are just trying to do their jobs to keep us all safe.
Thank you, Chairman Stewart. Next question goes to Delegate Freitas. Comes to us from Margaret from Charlottesville, and it has to do with trade policy. What is your position on President Trump's recently announced tariffs on China?
So let's be honest about what a tariff is. A tariff is a tax. That's what it is. Do you want the federal government telling you who you're allowed to basically do business with, or who you're allowed to offer in exchanges with? The other thing that I cannot stand about tariffs with respect to who it actually affects is that it's generally the people that are the lowest side of the income bracket. So if you're shopping at Walmart, or if you're shopping at Target or whatnot, and then all of a sudden all of those products go up because we're imposing tariffs on a foreign country, that creates a problem. But there's also a reciprocal effect that's just as worse, and that's this. When you tax a material, steel, aluminum, whatever it might be, you're not just taxing that, you're taxing every single product which utilizes it, which means now all of those respective industries have less money to hire people, less money to have provide pay raises, less money to do bonuses, less money to innovate, less money to expand. So doing a tariff is a little bit about like poisoning yourself, hoping that it'll kill the other person first. All right, now, here's what I will say. I do respect the fact that Donald Trump is very good at negotiation and oftentimes does things or said things or puts into effect temporary policy and put himself in a better negotiating position. Because we do have a lot of bad trade deals that are advertised as free trade. They're not. They're managed trade where different interests have basically manipulated the votes to ensure that they get a special advantage. But I want to move to more of a trade and really an economy in general where I don't have the government constantly stepping in and taxing and regulating my decisions and your decisions with respect to how we exchange goods and services. But we need to understand a tariff is a tax, and I don't support tax raises on the American people.
Thank you, Delegate Freitas. Chairman Stewart, your thoughts on trade policy?
If you never actually follow through on a threat, people will never respect you in a negotiation. I'm an international trade attorney. My livelihood depends upon international trade, and I believe in free trade. The problem, of course, is that while we've been backing down every single time, even though we're the most powerful economy on the face of the planet, as we've been backing down, we're losing our industry. You don't have to go very far to see once thriving industrial centers in the United States, and here in Virginia as well, that are now ghost towns. You import a vehicle into the United States, it's a 2.5% tariff. You want to export it to the EU, it's a 10% tariff. You want to export it to China, it's a 25% tariff. We need to follow through with our threats, and they will back down. They are enjoying an $800 billion per year trade surplus with the United States. That means a trade deficit with us. It is time to put it through, and let me tell you something. When we do it, they're going to come to the table. They're going to come to the table because we just made it clear that we're actually going to carry through on our threats and protect American workers and American jobs and American businesses.
Thank you, Chairman Stewart. Bishop Jackson.
I won the nomination for Lieutenant Governor 5 years ago and won 1 million votes across the Commonwealth. I'm the only candidate who's had that experience. I talk to people all over the Commonwealth, and I'll tell you what another tax is. Another tax is watching a grown man stand in front of you and cry because the job that he took care of his family with is going overseas. He's got to figure out how to support himself and his family because that's done. It's not done simply because of the company making a rational economic decision. It's done because of government policies that made it more likely that that company would be forced to do so or would have advantages in doing so. Look, I think that the president is on to something here. He's on to something in trying to, I don't think it's inevitable that we completely lose our manufacturing base. And I think the president is on to something in trying to restore that. I think he's on to something, a point that's been lost, which is he said, you know, we can't afford to have all of our steel manufactured by outside forces. We need to have our own steel manufacturing base here because we need that for our weaponry, we need it for our military. So, look, I'm prepared to give President Trump the benefit of the doubt and watch him work this. And if I were in the U.S. Senate right now, I would be supporting him. I'm in favor of free trade. I'm in favor of free markets. But we have been having our hat handed to us, and our people have been hurting. And to me, the loss of a job and the ability to support your family is the worst tax of all.
Thank you, Bishop Jackson. Our next question, we turn a little bit away from trade to national security. We direct the question to Chairman Stewart. It comes to us from Sarah Boast of Stanton, Virginia. President Trump recently tweeted that he's interested in a face-to-face meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. What do you think should be done to keep North Korea from obtaining nuclear weapons that threaten the United States?
I think you need to remind them that if they ever launched a nuclear weapon against the United States or its possessions or its allies, that there would no longer be a North Korea. That is what we need to do, and we need to be very serious about this. This is my background in international affairs, and let me tell you something. There's only one thing that a dictator understands, and that's strength and power. You need to stand up to them. You can't do what the Clinton administration did in the 1990s. Try to bribe them not into developing nuclear weapons. It doesn't work. Why? Because they're liars. They're only concerned about one thing, and that's maintaining power, and sometimes expanding that power into the southern part of the peninsula into South Korea. And absolutely, I think what the president is doing by, yes, we should never be afraid of negotiation, but it always must be from a position of strength. And reminding them, Professor, I respect your background in this area, reminding them that we hold all of the cards.
Well, I'm reminded of the fact that Muammar Gaddafi was an absolutely intractable, recalcitrant foe until Ronald Reagan put a missile in his bedroom. And he had an epiphany that maybe working with the United States might have its advantages. And look, George Washington said the best way to avoid war is to be prepared for it. And I think that President Trump is doing something that the former president simply didn't have the fortitude to do, which is let people know that if we have to use force, we will. Because that's the only credible way, in my view, of avoiding the use of force. And so, yes, I think that Kim Jong-un needs to understand that if he messes with us, it will be not only the end of him, but potentially the end of his entire country. I think that's got to be on the table. I'm very glad, by the way, that John Bolton is going to be the new National Security Advisor. I think that was the best choice that the president could have made at this time.
Thank you, Bishop Jackson. Delegate Freitas, your thoughts on North Korea?
Well, I actually spent some time training South Korean special operations, and I can say right now, when you look at it from a comprehensive view, South Korea really has everything they need from an economic standpoint and a military standpoint to be able to defend themselves against North Korea, with the exception being the nuclear threat. Unfortunately, the United States has displayed a lot of weakness, especially in the 90s under the Clinton administration, and subsequently under the Obama administration as well, with the way that we interact with dictators. We need to understand that Kim Jong-un has probably done more than any other leader in the world to suppress and oppress his people to the point where they really have no conception of what is going on outside the world. You don't engage a dictator like that unless you're doing it from an absolute position of strength. And the dictator needs to believe that you will use whatever is required and your power in order to ensure U.S. military victory and dominance within the region. However, you need to be very, very careful about engaging in open-ended negotiations with something like that, because it will be used as a propaganda tool in order to shore up his control over his own people. I think the best way to engage in a place like North Korea is you need to start engaging with dissident groups that you have operating in South Korea, so that you're able to influence what's going on the northern side. Because I will tell you this, go watch a documentary on North Korea, or if you've ever spent any time on the peninsula, I can tell you it is amazing. If you've ever looked for a more stark contrast between what happens in a free economy and a free society and a despotism, North Korea and South Korea is it. But again, we have to operate from a position of strength and not give Kim Jong-un any opportunity for propaganda.
Thank you, Delegate Freitas. Our next question goes to Bishop Jackson. This comes from Scott Friesen in Nelson County, and it has to do with the use of drones in the war on terror. The Trump administration recently announced a drone strike in Libya. Do you support the current administration's approach to the war on terror? And what should be different if we should change anything?
Well, I'll tell you, it's certainly a lot better than the approach we had over the last 8 years, because we're actually seeing results. And for me, that's what ultimately matters. We got ISIS has been driven back. Their claims of hegemony in Syria to a caliphate have basically dissipated in the face of President Trump's policies. I think that the president is sounding the right note and letting it be known that he is prepared to do whatever is necessary to decimate this enemy, as opposed to what we used to hear from the former administration, which was it was just kind of a problem that we would manage somehow. Look, you asked about drones. I thought you were going to the whole issue of civil rights, because in my view, the Obama administration's toying with the idea of using drones on American citizens is something I would object to very highly. We have not heard that from this administration. So generally speaking, until we get into specifics, yes, I support the general direction in which the president is taking us in fighting the war on terror.
Thank you, Bishop Jackson. Delegate Freitas?
So a drone is a tool, and it's no better or no worse than the mechanisms framework in which it's used. My concern really is not so much with drug use in one way or the other. My concern is the fact that Congress has completely abdicated its responsibility with respect to aggressive military warfare. So, again, I say this as someone who served 2 combat tours overseas. I certainly understand when it is necessary to deploy men and material into harm's way in order to defend the Constitution and defend the United States. What I am tired of is Congress, whether it's under the War Powers Act, whether it's under not reforming FISA, or just automatically reauthorizing military uses, that they're not, once again, claiming their responsibility for sending men and women into harm's way. And they do this on purpose. It's a win-win politically for Congress, because what they essentially get to say is that when everything's going fine, they authorize funding for the military operations. And when things start to go bad, they just blame it on the president. So I've been very encouraged by the fact that the president is incredibly supportive of the military and is willing to give all the ground commanders the freedom that they need in order to execute operations in a way that actually makes sense for the operational environment. Because I can tell you it was not going that way under Obama. But I want to see Congress once again reassert itself into the decision-making process when it comes to sending men and women overseas. Because quite frankly, I expect men and women in the Senate to display an ounce of the courage they expect of our men and women in uniform before they send them into harm's way.
Thank you, Senator. Chairman Stewart.
The President is the Commander-in-Chief, and we have to provide him his due latitude with regard to foreign affairs and the use of our military overseas. That said, our standard with regard to our national foreign policy, must always be U.S. national security interest first. And I think the time has come to declare that the United States is no longer the world's policeman. It doesn't work. How did it work in Iraq? A country that posed no national security threat to the United States, but now it does because it's become a hotbed of terrorism. How did that work in Egypt when we tried to overthrow a government? Only to have it replaced by the Muslim Brotherhood, which is antithetic to U.S. national interests. How did that work in Syria, where we tried to overthrow, yes, a brutal dictator, only to be replaced for part of the country by terrorists? And how did that work in Libya with Muammar Gaddafi? We supported the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi, and now we have another breeding ground for terrorists that do, in fact, pose national security threat to our interests. We need to scale back, and we need to take a look at what we're actually accomplishing with these involvements in the Middle East and throughout the world. That standard must always be the U.S. national security interests. I don't care what happens in Syria or Egypt or any of those other countries unless it's in the policy, the national security interests of the United States of America. And by the way, this is not a new idea. This is the idea that was implemented during the Reagan administration to great effect.
Thank you, Chairman Stewart. The next question, it's all right. We're going to switch to Delegate Freitas. We're also going to change gears a little bit. We're going to come much closer to home to here in Charlottesville. The question comes to us from Martha, ironically from Alexandria, that has to do with freedom of speech. The events of August 11th and August 12th in Charlottesville threaten minority groups in Charlottesville, but also around Virginia and across the nation. So, how can we protect the freedom of speech while also keeping our cities and campuses safe from hate speech?
Well, I think the first thing that has to be mentioned is that, again, looking at people marching in Charlottesville with Nazi flags and advocating for white supremacy was just absolutely abhorrent. To have family members that fought to extinguish that regime and then to watch people on our own soil advocate for it is just something that turns my stomach in a way that I can't even properly express. Now, one of the things that we have to guard against is that in our abhorrence of their actions, we also understand that we protect and we have certain things that we enshrine within our Constitution because we recognize the necessity that in order to protect your freedom of speech, I have to protect the speech of somebody else that is saying something that I disagree with. We cannot go down the same road that we're starting to see in England right now, that we're starting to see in Canada, where they actually set up tribunals for hate speech. I was talking with someone once that said, well, hate speech is different. It shouldn't be protected the same way. I said, well, what's hate speech? And as I began to explain, I said, well, who decides what hate speech is? Oh, well, the government. I'm like, okay, great. Donald Trump's president, do you want him deciding for you what hate speech is? And she absolutely did not, and that's the problem. Liberty and freedom also comes with a degree of personal responsibility. The way that you combat a bad idea, like Nazism, National Socialism, which is what Nazism was, or white supremacy, is you combat it with a good idea, which is liberty and freedom, and recognizing that each person has an inherent intrinsic value. And so the way that we have to combat things like that is we need to make sure that when they show up to protest or say whatever they're going to say, whenever they drag 300 people out of their mother's basement and come and advocate for Nazism, we show up and we let them know that that is not the sort of thing that will ever